Let's be brutally honest right now. That's a big question.
I'm looking for someone who doesn't want to go to base camp, but they want to go to the very top.
Whether it's here, India, New York.
Civilization was born at happy hour.
That's what wins. That's what stands out. That's what people are interested in. That's what I want to know. The Hospopreneurs Podcast with James Henderson.
Hello and welcome back to the Hospopreneurs Podcast. For long-time listeners, and I mean really long time, the name Mancino might sound familiar. Giancarlo Mancino, the company's founder, was one of my earliest guests on the program at episode 11 back in 2017. Now a key player in the world of Vermouth and aperitivos, Mancino is collaborating with EcoSpirits on a brand new low-waste packaging format. My guest today, Elena Urbani, is paid to tour the globe and share that news as Mancino Vermouth's global brand ambassador. Successful in her own right, having navigated a hospitality career spanning London's top cocktail bars, Mr. Fogg's, Nightjar and A Bar with shapes for a name, to a role as Commis Chef at the Michelin-starred restaurant Fogg by Adam Handling. Elena also has a keen interest in philosophy, something that you'll know resonates with me, and enrolled in an entire degree in it during the pandemic. Recorded in the back room of the award-winning cocktail bar Above Board, we cover a great deal in this interview and somehow only skim the surface of Elena's multifaceted interests. Hello and welcome to the show, Elena.
Thank you.
It's a pleasure to have you on. I'm really excited to get into the interview today. As you know, the first question that I like to ask is a crazy hospitality story or exceptional hospitality experience. I'd love to know what you have for the program today.
I've been thinking about this one quite a lot because, working in hospitality, like every day you have different guests or crazy people, stories, this kind of stuff, until I found my one. It actually happened before I went to work in hospitality properly. So I was 19, just moved to London because I wanted to study English a little bit. It was supposed to be a gap year between high school and university. So I just moved and I was staying at the place of a friend of mine because I was still trying to settle down. And there was this bar that now is still closed. It was called something like Travel Bird, something like that. And I was going there quite often, but nothing pretentious, like more a cocktail bar, pub. It was close to home, nightcap before going to sleep and this kind of stuff.
What was your nightcap of choice there? Just wondering if we can set the scene.
Probably at the time, either gin tonic, either just a beer. I was not too much into cocktails yet. But I like the vibe, that you go there are people, bartenders, they'll talk to you. You feel a little bit of a regular. They say hi when you go. They recognize you. Feels like, ooh, I'm cool.
Great. Okay. So you're going there, having your nightcap.
No, that was usual. Then one night I was just going back home to my friend's place. But I noticed that I forgot my keys. And it was 2 a.m., something like that. I was alone and like any sad story, like my phone ran out of battery, all the drama that comes with that.
Classic.
I tried to buzz and my friend was asleep, so couldn't reply. I started panicking. You're 19, alone in London, 2 a.m. Not too much fun.
Do you have to travel across town or you've got to go far to get home?
Yeah, quite far, yeah. And the tube bus at midnight closes, so there is only night bus. Still not fun, full panic. So okay, you know what? I go to this place. I couldn't call my phone. I didn't have my phone, so I couldn't call any of my friends for help or stuff. I go to this place, at least a familiar face. And I go there. They were closing down. So I just bump into the door. I explain them the situation and stuff. I was desperate, crying, this kind of thing, like a baby. And they'd be nice enough to say, you can just stay there, chill here all night. At 7 a.m. is going to come the cleaner. So you will probably have to leave. But it was amazing.
Wow, that's so nice.
And you feel like proper hospitality. Otherwise, I would have spent the night in the street. I was so grateful. I came back with presents for them and this kind of stuff. I felt like they saved my life and this kind of thing. And in that moment, I realized a lot how much good and cool can hospitality be. Because, when you raise up, my mom was quite protective with me because I have only my mom. So, when you are in another city alone at night, every time you go to bars, they are going to put you drug in the drink, this kind of thing.
You hear stories as well, London's a big city, you're probably worried about these things.
But no, they gave me a roof for a night and they've been so lovely. And I fell in love with hospitality.
Yeah, that's a nice story. Thank you. How then has that influenced your journey since having that sort of experience?
I used to always love to go around, drink and stuff. And I started to feel very confident about the word of the night. And the more I was discovering new places, new drinks, I was getting very excited. Again, I was in London to study English, but at one point I needed a job. So at the beginning, I was a waitress because it was like the easiest thing to find, basically. But then one day I gave my notice. So I was looking for another job and I went to cut my hair. And I was talking with the hairdresser saying, I am looking for a job. London is expensive, all this kind of chit chat. And I was like, there's a friend of mine, he owns a bar. They are looking for stuff. Maybe you can go and try. I was like, oh, yeah, sure. So I go to this trial shift, but they started asking me margaritas and daiquiris. For now, now it looks like normal stuff. I had no idea what a jigger was or what a sugar was. So it was a big failure, but I loved it.
When was this?
I was still 19, so 6 years ago.
6 years ago, okay. There's a lot of development in the industry since then as well. But you were still learning the ropes. You're coming up. Okay, so you didn't know what a jigger was and you're doing this. You're thrown into this training at this venue. What's going on? How did you?
I asked help to the other bartenders, enough, where all young people, very chill and stuff. So we started laughing a lot about it. Or just pour pints or you still have two hands. So you can maybe wash glasses or take orders, this kind of things, take payments. And after a couple of hours, maybe they were building drinks for me. They was just telling me to shake, which I didn't know how, but I just shake, the better you can do. Of course, even that, it was not the best cocktail bar in the world. But I remember that when I went out, I was like, oh, I want to do this job. That day changed my life, my vision and stuff. And still I was studying. I went to university and everything.
What did you study as well?
Philosophy. Completely different. I studied because I loved it. And I love studying. I love the topic and stuff. But I never wanted to be a philosopher. I never want to be a teacher or researcher. Just something that you do for the sake of doing, for the sake of love.
I'm interested in then whether that was a decision that you made before you were interested in hospitality or just something alongside it, or is it something that you just sort of picked because you're like, oh, philosophy's broad and interesting to me, I'll do that?
So I studied philosophy in high school, first of all, and it was already my favorite subject. Then I moved to London for this gap year, which ended being forever. So I never moved back. I started working and then I was too much interested in working, so I didn't start at uni yet, until COVID actually. In COVID, we all lose the job, but I thought that you can either see it as opportunity, either as a loss of time. Just stay home and bake. While I was like, oh, it's the first time that I actually have all the time in the world. We were still getting paid in London with the follow. So you could cover your rent, you could cover your food and stuff. You have all these free times. You know what? I started university. And that's how I started. Of course, then after COVID, I didn't finish in 1 year uni. So I had to start working and study, which has been a little bit tough, especially because, you work on nights, you finish late, and sometimes you have lessons at 10 a.m. So it's not your favorite thing.
Oh, yeah. I think anyone who's working in the trenches in hospitality knows that sort of balance. Anyone who's studying and working as well, because it's a real challenge. The uni doesn't know that you finished work at 3, 4, 5.
Yeah. And even if they knew, they don't care.
Yeah, that's right. You're not here for that 8 a.m. class. Where were you?
Yeah, and it's mandatory to attend and all this stuff. And knowing that I'm not doing it because I want to work with that, sometimes people are like, don't you like yourself? Why do you need to make your life more difficult? It should be that easy. You have your job you like, why you do it?
You said before that philosophy was your favorite subject in school. What was it about philosophy that you really liked?
I really like seeing how people see the world in general. And for me, it's very fascinating, especially ancient philosophy. So a lot about Greeks, Latins, or the modern one of my favorites is Nietzsche.
I love Nietzsche.
But even because he studied a lot of the ancient ones, that's how he started. My cat is called The Birth of the Tragedy from the Spirit of Music, which is a long name, but it's a Nietzsche's book.
For those out there who are listening, who don't know who Nietzsche, people pronounce his name differently, can you tell us a little bit about Friedrich Nietzsche?
Again, it's my favorite philosopher from the 19th century. And he started as a philologist. So he was starting reading Plato, Socrates, and all the pre-Socratians one. That's why I really like him. And then he developed his own philosophy about the will of power. And it's a very complex stuff. It's really about ethics. It's very anti-Christian, anti-ethics, and it holds that like we need to live our life not according to God and what we have been taught, but we need to do this with this will of power to free ourselves and become Übermensch, which in English is funny because it's Superman.
Superman, the Übermensch, yeah, Übermensch.
Exactly. And get free, basically, which is a very positive vision of the world. It's sad that he ended up mad and talking with a horse.
I'd like to connect that up with the work that you do now and hospitality. How then do you link your interest in philosophy and this deep way of thinking with the very surface level and hedonistic nature of hospitality?
So I think that first of all, there's always a very good mean of conversation. If you study philosophy or not, it doesn't really matter. It's again about how you see the world. If you're into religion, if you're not, if you're into metaphysics, if you're into ethics, all of us, even if you maybe didn't stop and think about it, but we all have some values and can be shared values, can be not shared values, each country, each population, each people, or maybe we are all common there. So there is something that for the whole humanity, like we all value life, I suppose. I hope we do. So even if you didn't study it or if you don't spend your life reading about philosophy books, are topics that are actually quite common and is not that separated or something that mental as sometimes people can believe. And I think that with this job, with the position I have now, it is a global ambassador for Mancino and Lucano. It's super interesting and cool to be able to travel the world and see all these different cultures, how they approach the industry, like food and drinks, how do we approach service and people, because there is a lot of study, even like I was speaking with Aiden from Above recently, and he was telling me about social media, for example. My audience is 70% women, but because on social, women are more likely to, post, tag each other and say, hey, we need to go there, compared to men. But maybe the industry is more made about from men and these kind of things. And if you don't want to call it philosophy, you don't have to. It's something social and about humans. And so I found it fascinating.
I'm very interested in philosophy and would love to chat with you in a lot more detail about that. Maybe not on the podcast. Another time outside of it would be amazing. In that answer, you mentioned your role. We haven't actually talked about what it is that you do. We have had a lot of brand ambassadors on the show over the years, but I'd like you just to describe, just briefly, the work that you do now.
It's been the most difficult answer to give to my family in so far.
Yeah, I bet.
Because so you're a brand ambassador. What do you do? I was like, I represent a brand. Yeah, but what do you do? What do they pay you? So every time it's quite funny because from the outside, especially my friends from high school and stuff that are not really into the industry, they see me and like, oh, Elena, you're the best job in the world. Like one day you're in Australia, one day you're in US and stuff. It looks super cool. It is super cool. You travel, you meet people, you get drinks, food, kind of for free, kind of. So it's pretty cool. You need to bring something back to the brand. So yeah, I represent this brand. Actually, I represent 3 different brands. Like today we had to talk with for Mancino, and which are all the 3 are Italian brands. One is, of course, the Mancino is a Vermouth, and then I have an Amaro and an aperitif line. So it's all Italian products. Guess where I'm from? I'm Italian. So it's something that I find quite rooted in my culture. Even before being an ambassador, my favorite drink has always been a Negroni or still bitter drinks, aperitivo drinks. Don't take me wrong, I love daiquiris and whatever, or vodka martinis, but I don't drink that every day, all day long. I'd rather go for more an Americano, like a lower ABV and stuff, otherwise I would be dead.
Something a bit more sessionable.
Exactly. Being global is, again, for me was super special because it gives me the opportunity to travel a lot and meet every time new people and bars and see places. But you always have in mind the goal of the brand. So for them, it's very expensive to pay my ticket and hotels and all the stuff. So I always need to keep in mind that it's important that the brand has a return to it. So that, in 1 year, the sales are going to be better and higher, or the positioning of the brand, the visibility of the brand, it needs to grow. I mean, it's my first job as ambassador. So I just started 7 months ago. And especially the first months, it was like a lot of things happening. You hope you're doing well and this kind of stuff. I'm very happy that they trusted me and giving me all this faith and this opportunity. But I know that it's an important thing and I want to make them proud and happy as well. So now my biggest goal, of course, is every time I go around, it needs to make sense. It's not just to waste my time and their time.
It's interesting because even your answer sort of dances around a number of different topics. around what being a brand ambassador is. And for listeners, if you want to go back through the long catalog of episodes we have, there are so many episodes with brand ambassadors. I'm going to link this up a little bit more, and particularly around the work that you do. You've given us a bit of a background on yourself. You studied philosophy. One of the key questions that I ask on the program, it's normally one of the first, is why you do what you do. I'd like to understand what it is that really sits behind the work that you do, whether it's as a brand ambassador in life. I'm looking to understand what inspires you to get up and do what you do every day.
So as we just spoke about it, I study philosophy and I'm quite a big fan of determinism. So determinism is the theory that given the law of nature plus the past events, the future is already determined. So everything that happened cannot happen in any other way. It has some causes like that you don't have free will and this kind of stuff. So I believe that I reach where I am today, given all what happens in the past. So even as I told you before, the day I went to the hairdresser to cut my hair, then he caused a lot of effects that bring me where I am here today and now. And plus, in general, I always been doing something that I love. Like I didn't have to work if I didn't want to. My family all been like studying or engineers, architects, and this kind of stuff. Me, I would have never been happy in an office job, doing the same every day, all the week, all my life, in the same city. Like I like to travel, I like to move. And even when now, of course, I'm traveling more, but even when I was at the bar, you don't have 2 days doing the same things because every day you have different customers, different guests, a different experience or a different shift. And so it makes me feel much more alive and I love it.
What is it though that sits behind that? What is it that by doing work in and around hospitality that really gives you like that deep life satisfaction, that we all really yearn for and try to find a way to articulate?
So when I started, it was a lot about the physical movements. So I really enjoyed making drinks, like physically, doing your round. Maybe you are dispensed, so you don't I didn't know the language too well yet. So you're not serving people. You're there, you're building your round. And you do all your drinks, you need to be fast, you cannot play with yourself. And then it became much more about the people, not only the people in the industry, so your colleagues or co-workers or people in other bars that you admire, but the guests themselves. And so when you realize that you can change not someone's life, but you can change someone's day, and if you do it every day, you kind of change someone's life. And I think this is beautiful because even if we are not saving lives or anything, you give a space to people to enjoy themselves, having a date, having just a night off with their friends, with their partners or stuff, or even just by themselves. And I think it's important. We saw even just with COVID that we all went crazy because we couldn't go out. And how beautiful it's been when all the venues started reopening and we're all busy and with good vibes and stuff. The alcohol industry has been there since forever. The Romans were doing wines and they have tabernas, so the kind of bars where they serving food and drinks. We didn't invent nothing, but hospitality has always been there and will always be there.
Thank you for sharing your answer on that as well. I'm interested in understanding a bit more around creativity and your creative process. We've talked a bit about your background, philosophy, why you do what you do, the industry itself. I'm interested in understanding in this BA, brand ambassador role, it is inherently creative as well, which kind of allows you to be a little bit more flexible in how you express the brand and express yourself. And I'm sure you've got a lot of experience in the industry. Those listening will know, who've been in and around hospitality will know how creative the industry can be. And for those who aren't, it is inherently creative in the products that you produce. How do you exercise that creative muscle, that creative ability in being a brand ambassador now?
For sure, it's much more different compared to working in a bar, even just for the fact that I don't have a lab anymore. I don't have a bar anymore where I can just play with drinks and ingredients and use whatever I like. So if before I could spend a full shift on R&D, with using a centrifuge on the rotowap or whatever I had, now I have a very little space in my house and with the stuff I have where I can buy in the supermarkets or whatever. But at the same time, I think this can be a plus. So if you start exploring the idea of creativity through limitation, of course, you don't have everything, but this makes you push more with the things you have, makes you push more about the technique you use or the amount of hours of extraction that you can, now I just throw in things at you. It's more about this. Where before being a brand ambassador, when I was still bartending, I also did an experience in a Michelin-starred kitchen where I was a chef. I was a Commis Chef. The big chef was not me.
That distinction is important for
it's so
those
important.
who work in kitchens too. They'll appreciate that you made that distinction.
Exactly. But for me, it was very fascinating to be able to work in such a fine dining kitchen without having an experience, because I believe that the bar industry takes a lot of inspirations by chef and food about techniques, about combination of flavors and pairings. And if today a lot of bars have rotovapes, it's because, 15 years ago, Ferran Adrià was using rotovapes. And after that, I even saw that going back to the bar, it was I had a different approach to ingredients and things. And now, even if I have a less bar shift or stuff, every time I do a guest shift or I need to design a menu with my drinks and my brands, I always try to remember what was to be a bartender, what was a kitchen. And so maybe I play a little bit with both. Try to make it simple because, again, I cannot experiment too much with what I have. So I want to be sure that it tastes good, because at the end of the day, you need to make something which tastes good. And that's it.
Like most people, you'll also have a bank of knowledge that you can look at some specs and know, that's probably going to taste good. I know that, I wouldn't put that much in there of that, right? It is a bit like that too. So you can recognize those things, but you can't know, you're steering that, it's like adding a pinch of salt. You're not going to know unless you can actually taste it, right? So it is difficult. I'd like to know about how you actually entertain those ideas. So when you get an idea, how then do you play with that? Now that you can't actually physically play, because you said that something that you really liked about the industry and when you were getting started was being able to physically do it. You can't do that. It sounds like you like that tangible nature of it. How do you exercise that? How do you play with those ideas when you have them?
As you said, I kind of know when something's going to be balanced, at least. I know kind of a proportion. I know ingredients that taste good together. So this is already a good base. When I have something I really, really want to try, recently I've been doing, a drink with a vegan double cream infused. And then I wanted to clarify. I was like, but this is weird,
It's weird, gets a bit tricky, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And you don't want to show up on the other side of the world for a guest shift and your drink is gross. And so in that case, maybe I ask some friend of in bars saying, hey, I'll bring you this stuff. And maybe you get a free bottle. You're the nice guy. And they do the prep for you. You taste together, which is still it's a good help. And even this is good. It's beautiful of the industry because we are all supporting each other, from bartenders to brand ambassadors, because we have all been there. We are all friends, which is nice. Or otherwise, if maybe I'm outside of the country and it's something too difficult, I'll try to just keep it as simple as I can.
How are you thinking about it in the process? That's what I'm trying to uncover is, what's your thought process in doing that?
Usually, either I start from a classic drink and then I just twist on it. I say, of course, now I work in a Vermouth. So you think about all the Vermouth drinks. That can be a Negroni, can be a Martini, can be a Boulevardier, Manhattan, all this kind of stuff. And I was like, okay, let's do it reverse. And so maybe you change the specs on the other way. And then you change the main spirits, which is in our case, ours is reverse. It's going to be the second spirits. And you try to do a little infusion, this kind of stuff. Or sometimes I just think, peach sounds good. And with peach, I don't know.
So that just comes to you, just like most creative people.
Yeah.
And I think anyone who's listening and creative, this is going to resonate with them, but you just have an idea. Sometimes you're stimulated by something.
And most of them are nights.
Most of them are, yeah.
In the bad way, just cannot sleep and you think about stuff.
Yeah, I find the shower for me is the place where I come up with all my ideas, always. It's just instantly ideas come.
No, bed.
A lot of people, it's right as they're going to sleep and then it'll come to them. So I totally understand that. Interesting. Elena, what are you learning about or exploring at the moment? This question is very broad. It's deliberately vague. I'm looking to understand where your attention is.
So at the moment, changing the job meant a lot of changing the comfort zone and the whole lifestyle in general. And I'm doing things which is completely different. Even if in the same industry, it's really different compared to what I was doing before. I'm focusing a a lot on things that before I didn't even talk about, like sales, the most boring parts maybe we can call, but I think it's very important. And if tomorrow most of bartenders say that they want to open their own business and their bar at one point, I never knew about orders and contracts, retro, all this kind of support, but you're going to fail. You can do the best drink in the world, but if you don't know how to let a business survive, it's going to be impossible. And doing it from the brand point of view, I think is very interesting because first of all, it's not your business and it's not a business, it's a brand, which is works with business. So you see how they talk with you and you learn a lot of how to talk with them, and doing it in different markets of the world, it makes me even understand how to talk with different markets, different people. And so now I would say that more what I'm trying to figure it out is this more sales, marketing a lot, even like in social media contents, how to express, how to communicate what we are doing, what we're doing. Soon we are going to do a new Mancino release, and there's been working for 1 year behind. It's not that, you wake up and you do things. So all this process that there is behind, which for me was completely unknown, is also been like the most tough part, of course, because it's something new. But I think it can give me a lot, and I'm focusing on that.
I'm interested to hear more about how you're actually learning that. Are you just doing it on the fly, just as you work in the role, or are you reading things? Are you watching videos, podcasts? What is it that you're doing to learn about these sorts of things?
Most of it is just day by day working. I'm lucky enough to have a strong team with me, from Giancarlo, who is, of course, is the business owner and founder, to the Lucano family, who now bought the product. And so the first meeting, even when they just do the yearly budget or stuff, you're just there, you listen, you try to write down as many things that you can understand. And then the second one is going to be a little bit more easier. But even all the abbreviation they use, AMP, SKU, at the beginning, it's like just empty words. Every day is learning. But I didn't have much time not to learn and stuff between the job and the traveling and stuff. So it's more like that.
On the fly.
Yeah, on the fly.
You mentioned Giancarlo. It's been a long time since he was a guest on the podcast, way, way back. You and I talked about this just before we started this interview today, but it was a long time ago. He was one of the first guests on the program, within the first 10. So if you're a listener out there and you want to hear early days of Hospopreneurs, it's a long way back, but I haven't listened to that for myself again in a long time. So I'm going to have to go back and listen to it myself now that I've mentioned it today. But I'm interested, Elena, in the learning that you're doing. And in the learning that you've done, you would have seen a number of things change in the industry, even though it's not a 20, 30-year long career, but you would have seen things change, particularly being in London, in on-prem. A lot's changed in and around. Before the interview, we talked about things being showy and going to minimalist. I'm interested to hear more around the innovations that you've seen in the space that you're in and what you see happening next.
So Giancarlo, for sure, has been like in the last 15 years developing all his products for his brand, not just Mancino, but even all the rest. He has Spritz, the aperitif line. He has like a glass line, all these things. And he's always like on top trying to see what's the new trend. And this is why, we started with Secco, Bianco, and Rosso, which are the main release. But then it went with a limited edition like Kinato, Sakura, Copy, which are different flavors in Vermouth that were never explored before. So I think that even just this was a great innovation. And we have a super good feedback in the markets. Like Sakura, which is the cherry blossom one, has been now doing almost the same volumes as the Rosso. So things that means that people are very interested in new flavors and new techniques and pairings. Plus, there has been a lot of the Asian fashion of bars and restaurants with an Asiatic taste and stuff. It went really well. Or, for example, a few years ago, we launched the Vecchio, which has been the first and only barrel-aged vermouth. As I mentioned to you before, we are working on a new release, which is going to be Mancino Marino. So it's basically the same liquid as Rosso, but it has been aged for 6 months, 25 meters under the sea in Portofino. There have been already some wine aged under the sea, but it's very interesting to see Giancarlo's mind, always looking for the next thing, for the new thing. And even maybe you may like it, maybe not, but it's not much about this. The point is more about developing looking at new stuff. And you take this liquid, you bring down there, and now it's going to be the first release. We don't even know, maybe it's not nice, and maybe we are going to stop making it. But it is exploring. You know that you have this liquid with a constant temperature, constant lighting, and with just the waves that make the molecules inside moving. So in a way, it must develop. Plus, it's cool, the label and the bottle with all the sea is going to get a little bit ruined and stuff. So it looks real cool. Another innovation that we did this year, and also the reason why I am currently in Australia, is that we are launching Mancino in EcoSpirit packaging, which means that it's also actually the first and only Vermouth with a low carbon and low waste packaging system. And we are very proud of it. It's 2023. And I think it's important that even us in our industry, we all talk about sustainability and low waste stuff. But it's important that we actually do something for that. And being a brand means that it's not like a bar that you can try to not waste your garnishes or your leftovers. Being a brand, you still have to produce bottles. You still have to produce your liquid and things. And you need to ship them and you need to bottle them. And being able to be with EcoSpirits and so even doing something for the planet for us is beautiful.
Listeners will know we had an episode with EcoSpirits not too long ago. It feels like not long ago. Maybe it was. If it was a while ago now. But EcoSpirits are doing some great things. Paul's always posting some amazing updates on LinkedIn. I see him posting all sorts of great stuff that the company's doing. So great to see another initiative with Mancino.
Thank you.
Elena, what is your biggest challenge right now? It's a big question. It's very broad, very vague. Again, deliberately so. I'm seeking to understand what is giving you friction currently.
I would say probably the changing of life, because being a brand ambassador is very different from being a bartender. When you're a bartender, you put all the attention on others, while now I feel it's more on myself. Like it's before, like I was serving people at the bar, the focus is on people. Now when I go around, it's my masterclass and my guest shift and this kind of things, which is not that I don't enjoy, but it's very different. Sometimes it's tough because you always need to be, the fun guy, the happy guy, always on top of things and partying and things. But you cannot do it every day. You cannot drink every day because at one point, like you also need to think about your own health. So the first 6 months, I love that. I was like in every bar show and things and stuff and party. I met everybody, old friends, new friends. But you don't stand anymore for 12 hours moving. You are rather sitting and drinking or eating. And so now a big challenge is to keep well-balanced life between it's the first time in my life I'm going to the gym. Before I never had the need to, or I'm trying to eat more healthy. I give myself a limit of drinks each night because it's very easy, especially when your drinks are expensive. So it's like you kind of drink for free. It's very easy to step into the alcoholism. And I've been talking about this with a lot of other brand ambassadors, and it's something they also, all of them have been experiencing and suffering from. Because it's tough to be always everywhere and funny and happy and healthy and fit. And I love that job that much. I want to keep it for a long time.
It's not sustainable. You mentioned sustainability in drinks. It's sustainability in work.
Exactly. So you need to be good to yourself, remind that. And even when you want to party, to remember that maybe the day after, it's better not to. So now the challenge is personally is with that. Work-wise, for sure, is to keep on pushing the brand, which is pretty new. Like we are very proud of the work that's been achieved in only 15 years. But we know that where we compete with brands that have been there forever or since ages. It's already beautiful that we are recognized worldwide, that people know the name, know the bottle, they recognize it visually and everything. But it's important to keep on this path and growing rather than going back. So this is something that we always need to keep in mind.
Thank you very much, Elena, for joining me on the program today. It's great to revisit another episode with Mancino. I just have one question for you before we do disappear, and that's who would you like to hear on the show?
That's a good question. I think I would like to hear Lorenzo Antinori, which just opened Bar Leone and which has been the best bar I visited since I started the job. It's from Rome. I'm from Rome and it's based in Hong Kong. It really made me feel like back in Trastevere for a couple of hours. And I think it's doing something beautiful. And so I would like to learn more about how he came up with the idea, how long did it take? Because when I met him, we were all too busy to talk about it. And I think everybody will enjoy the conversation.
Okay. Thank you very much for the recommendation. Thank you for joining me on the program. Thank you for sharing your insights, your thoughts about the industry, your experience as a brand ambassador, philosophy, so many things. Been a pleasure.
Thank you so much. It was amazing.
This program was produced by H Media. We'll see you soon.